Just a few days ago, it looked like the Middle East was moving towards a much larger war when Iran started bombing Israel again in the fresh strikes. American forces were on high alert with the Iran blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, and the world was closely watching the Strait of Hormuz. And then suddenly, the US President Donald Trump announced a ceasefire peace deal framework with Iran, and for a moment, it looked like that after the 3 months, finally this crisis is getting over. But there is one problem, one very big problem. A country at the center of this whole conflict was never made part of this agreement. And if that country makes a single decision, then this entire peace deal agreement between the United States and Iran could collapse at any moment. The first phase of this peace deal agreement between the United States and Iran focuses on one immediate goal, that is, stopping the escalation in the Strait of Hormuz and reopen the shipping routes immediately. But this agreement is not built only around the military de-escalation. In fact, the center of this agreement is built around a massive economic incentive structure designed to keep Iran inside this peace deal. This peace deal framework includes plans for reconstruction and development fund worth $300 billion designed to attract private investment into Iran's economy after this war. But this is not a compensation package paid by the US government funds from American taxpayers' money. Rather, the money is expected to come from the private sectors, investors, and companies from the United States, Gulf states, Asia, and other regions. Now, on paper, it looks like a huge victory for Iran, but it also creates a new challenge because it's not a US government relief fund. Private investment fund cannot be simply ordered to be paid to Iran immediately. Investors will only commit capital if they believe the ceasefire will hold, sanctions relief will last, and this whole Middle East region remains stable. And that means the success of this agreement may ultimately depend not only on the United States and Tehran, but also on whether the private companies are willing to bet billions of dollars on Iran's future. Because unlike government aid, private investors are free to walk away from the moment that they believe the risk is becoming too high for them. And that means every economic incentive inside this peace deal agreement for Iran ultimately depends on one thing, which is stability. And stability has always been the biggest challenge in the Middle East, because just 36 hours after this agreement was announced, Israel launched fresh military strikes inside the Lebanon. The escalation immediately raised new questions about whether this ceasefire could actually survive. In response, Iran pulled back from the next stage of diplomatic engagement in Switzerland and closed the Strait of Hormuz once again. And suddenly, the very foundation of this agreement was tested by Israel immediately. Because while Washington and Tehran may be willing to negotiate, but they cannot fully control Israel's interests and objectives involved in this conflict against the Iran and Hezbollah. And that is exactly why this peace deal remains so fragile. The second phase of negotiation for this peace deal agreement has already begun. Iran's foreign minister, along with senior Iranian officials, recently traveled to Switzerland to participate in a new round of talks with the US representative led by Jerry Vance, while Qatar and Pakistan have been acting as the key mediator between the both sides. The discussions initially appeared to be moving forward, but tensions quickly emerged once again after Donald Trump warned that the United States could consider further military actions against Iran if Iran continued threatening to disrupt shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The warning prompted Iranian officials to temporarily withdraw from the direct negotiations, creating fresh uncertainty around the entire process of this peace deal. But the reality is that both Washington and Tehran have far too much to lose if this peace deal collapses. For the United States, this isn't really about Iran. It's about oil, it's about the Strait of Hormuz, and it's about preventing another long-term Middle East war for the United States that would not only soar energy prices and inflation globally, but also cost billions of dollars from the US taxpayers' money. especially with the midterm elections approaching later this year in November. The last thing Trump's administration wants right now is another conflict that pushes oil prices higher and angers voters back home in the United States. For Iran, the incentives are equally significant. Tehran is seeking access to nearly $300 billion in private reconstructions and investment commitments that have been discussed as part of the broader normalization process in this peace deal. It also wants the release of frozen Iranian assets and a gradual lifting of international sanctions that have weighed highly on Iran economy for years. In other words, both sides have something enormous to gain from this peace deal, but both sides also know that those benefits only exist if this agreement survives. But here is what most people are missing in this peace deal agreement, that this was not a peace treaty, it wasn't a territorial settlement, it did not solve the core disputes, and it did not include that one major player around whom this whole crisis involves: Israel. And Israel is not even a direct party to this peace deal agreement. Think about that for a moment. The country that sees Iran as its greatest security threat, the country that has spent years warning about Iran's nuclear program, is not even sitting on the table of this peace deal negotiation. And that creates the most dangerous question over the durability of this peace deal. Because this agreement may reduce tension between the United States and Iran and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But it does not meet Israel's objective without Israel's participation in it. Israel's absence from this peace deal is not the only part of the problem. There is another one, and it is harder to control even for the United States, which is the hostility of Hezbollah against Israel, and there is no commitment of Hezbollah in this peace deal. In this peace deal, Iran has asked US for broader regional security arrangements, including issues involving Lebanon. But from Israel's perspective, the threat from Iran and Hezbollah has not disappeared. Israel still faces Hezbollah across its northern border, so Israeli forces remain active in Lebanon. Many of Israeli security concerns are still not directly resolved by this peace agreement, and this is why military operations connected to Israel-Lebanon may not disappear suddenly by this peace deal agreement. Now just imagine a sequence. An incident occurs from Hezbollah, then Israel responds, Hezbollah retaliates, and eventually the confrontation grows again between Israel and Iran. So, yes, for now this peace deal may survive. The negotiations between the US and Iran may continue. The ceasefire may hold. And for now, the Middle East may step back from the brink of a much larger war. But when you look beneath the surface, the foundation of this peace deal agreement still looks very fragile. Because the United States has clear reasons to keep this deal alive. Iran also has clear reasons to keep this peace deal alive. But Israel is still pursuing security objectives that this agreement does not fully resolve. And that is why it will be very interesting to see not whether this peace deal is signed, but how long does it actually last.